Hello, salam, shalom, namaste, sat sri akal, aloha, hola, ciao, bonjour, buna, привет, mabuhay, and jean dobre. It's really, really good to be with you again, and I know you'll be so happy and excited you have joined us today because we have a very amazing guest with us, and it's Laurie Gerber, who is a dating coach. Welcome, Laurie.
Thank you for having me. Good to be here.
Yes, I'm so happy you are here. As I was sharing with you earlier, Laurie, we love talking about relationships on this show because, relationships form the core of our identities, of our existence in some senses. Our whole lives are about relationships. So learning about how to make our relationships more healthy, more fun, more easy, it's like something we really enjoy here. So extra, extra welcome to you.
Thank you. I agree that it is the most important thing.
Yes. And please, Laurie, tell us more about who you are and what you do.
Thank you. I have been a life coach for the last 20 years, more recently specializing, when I say more recently, maybe the last 10 years, specializing specifically in love and dating because I came to coaching unbeknownst to me basically ruining my own marriage. And I was not practicing the art of honesty with myself. So I did not understand the bad shape my most primary relationship was in and how that also affected all my other relationships. So that was such an eye opener for me that it actually led me to eventually become a coach and eventually to specialize in love and
Mm,
relationships and dating. And so now here I am 20 years later, 10,000 hours of experience later, having helped countless individual daters, couples, worked with Match.com and Zeus, and, dating sites and just uh, gathering a lot of data from the field about what's not working, what is working, what I wish we taught in schools. And I'm here to share,
wow.
here to share.
Mm, yes. And thank you for sharing part of your experience and where you're coming from. That is really helpful to know and understand. And I can resonate with that. And I think a lot of our listeners can resonate with that because a lot of us, we're, fellow coaches and healers and trainers, and a lot of us that I know, including myself, we have experienced some major challenge in our life and, been on a mission to first of all, heal ourselves from it or find a solution for ourselves. And then, you get to that point where you're like, hey, I want to share this with other people. I want to help other people with what I've learned as well. That is really, really cool. Ah. And now you mentioned the um, aspect of honesty, and you said that you weren't honest with yourself, and you didn't realize how that ended up impacting your relationships. Tell me more about that. Like when you talk about not being honest with yourself, what did that mean? What did that look like for you?
Yeah. Well, I was ignoring that whole area of life. I really wanted to focus. I had young children at the time. I was running a business. I really wanted to focus on those things. And I didn't want to focus on an area where I was suffering, but I didn't think it was dire.
Mm,
But in my coaching method, the one I learned from my coach, it's called the Handel method. You have to speak about what your ideal is in every area of life. So even if you're coming to work on your
mm,
business or your health, you have to talk about every area of life. What's the ideal and then what's the current reality? And you have to give it a quantitative answer and a qualitative. So scale of 1 to 10.
mm,
So when I talked about my ideal for my relationship as connected and intimate and close, I couldn't rate it over a 4, right? Like, according to the
mm.
rating scale, I just could, it forced me to be honest. It forced me to take what
Yeah.
was subconscious and in denial and make it conscious and admit that we weren't doing well. And even though it
Yeah.
wasn't dead yet, we really weren't doing well. But I was able to avoid that until that assignment forced it.
Mm. Yes. Yeah. Whoa. that happens also to be such a common experience. It's like there's something wrong. You know there's something wrong because you're not feeling entirely happy. Uh, there might be feeling stressed out for various, but you don't put your finger on it. Like you don't know exactly why am I feeling stressed out, unhappy, etc. Because either you're avoiding identifying that, or you just have so much going on, you just haven't had the opportunity to do it.
There's another way of
Um,
saying you're avoiding.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yes. The distraction that you allow in terms of, yes, business is really important to focus on. So let me focus on the business or, whatever else that may be.
Yeah.
That
I
is
mean,
so true.
work and children are the most famous excuses
Yes.
why you can't work on your relationship, as if the relationship is not the foundation of
Hmm.
everything. At least the love relationship, obviously,
Yes.
of relationships, but it's a pretty
Yeah.
trick we play on ourselves.
Yeah. How did you find the tensions in your marriage affecting other relationships, like with the children or even
Right.
maybe with your business, etc.?
Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode. Hope you're getting value out of it. For your information, this episode has been sponsored by the Happiness 101 program. Are you a change maker, coach, trainer, or healer? Are chains of fear holding you back from making the impact and income you desire? Using a unique combination of positive psychology and the spiritual wisdom of our most effective change makers, the Happiness 101 program helps you break through your limiting beliefs and manifest the abundance and success you desire with fun and ease. Interested? Book a free Happiness 101 exploration call with me, your happiness expert, Samia Bano. Just use my online calendar link in the show notes. Now, back to the show.
Well, I think for me, and I think for a lot of people, my relationship to food and my relationship to my partner deeply affects my relationship to myself. So
Mm,
if I'm being the kind of person I want to be in my primary relationship and in my relationship to food, which is I think really my relationship to the divine and to nature and to my own self, my own soul, if that's out of whack, then everything's out of whack. So I really think that's a pretty direct correlation, just self-esteem, self-confidence. But obviously the children are soaking everything up. I think that's
mm,
obvious, right? I think the thing that kids want most, even more than attention, even more than toys, even more than screens, is they want to see their parents happily connected with each other. And they didn't see that. They saw, occasional teammates, but not the kind of love I would want for them. That's not what they were
mm.
observing. And that was part of what got me to think twice about whether or not I could keep going on that way.
Yeah, it's interesting uh, for you, from my perspective, that you highlight this because and maybe partly it's like a culture thing, but I don't think it's just a culture thing at my end. And now I'm thinking about my Indian Pakistani culture, where, one of the things that you constantly hear people saying is, in the context of marriage is like you like couples uh, are constantly told, no, you have to stay together for the children. And oftentimes, even if the couple's not happy together for various reasons, it's like, no, you must stay together for the children. And that is such a deeply held belief. And, um, like, uh, and so what you're saying is if you're not happy in your marriage and your children are observing, it's having an impact on them that's not so good.
Right. I think that it's tricky to separate good parenting and religion.
Mm,
And I mean, I think we're still in a period in history where that's still very much intertwined, but it's changing. And so I think more and more as people become adults and speak out about their experience of being with unhappy parents, which is not something that was done 100 years ago, right? It just literally wasn't even done, right? Like nobody
yeah.
in any culture was talking crap about their parents. It just wasn't done. It was survival. If you survived, you should be lucky, you should be happy, you should be grateful. So it is very new to even talk about what it's like to be with parents who don't love each other, like each other, hurt each other.
Mm,
But the more that we're starting to hear it from people, the more we can question, is it better for the children or not? So I
yeah.
see advantages of having two adults in a household, sure. But sure, and disadvantages, but there are obvious advantages to that. But I think it's becoming more and more apparent that if you have one parent who is happy and sets a good example of being happy in relationships, happy in work, happy in health, that is what that child's gonna imitate because that's what they have.
Mm,
That's their first language. That's what they're gonna learn. If they have two happy parents, even better. Now it's stereophonic. If they have
yeah.
no happy parents, they don't learn the language or the tools of happiness. They just don't learn it because you can't learn
Mm,
a language if you're not exposed to it.
right. Yes. Yes. Interesting. We mentioned if you have even one happy parent in the home, they can still be learning. But how does that work in the context of the the partners, the adult partners? If one of them is happy and the other one's not so happy, is that even really possible? How does that work?
It really depends what you're talking about. If you're talking about
Mm,
somebody that's, in an uncontrolled addiction or a mental illness
mm,
that's not being treated versus a person who's not, that could be a very irreconcilable difference. But if you're talking about just over the course of a relationship, people
mm.
have bad periods in a good marriage, a good partnership. We
Yeah.
compensate for each other and we
Uh,
through thick and thin, rich or poor, sickness and in health and all that. But if you're talking about one person who wants to grow and evolve, and this may be more of who your listeners are, who wants to grow and evolve, who wants to be vulnerable, who wants to make up dreams and chase them, and another partner who absolutely doesn't, that can be an irreconcilable difference. It's not
yeah.
necessarily an irreconcilable difference, but it can be an irreconcilable difference if
Mm,
where the one person wants to go is mutually exclusive to where the other person wants to go or stay. Does that make
yeah.
sense? So sometimes it
Yes.
works and sometimes it doesn't. I mean, I have parents who are happily married. They could not be more different. They have different interests. They sleep in different rooms. They vacation differently. They travel differently. They read differently. They have in common. They love their children. They love each other and they like playing Scrabble. And that's it. And that's plenty, right? So I do not believe that people need to be the same or the same level of
Mm,
happiness to make a successful relationship. But I think more often we deny our incompatibility, especially if we used to be
mm.
compatible and then it changes. We don't want to face that. We don't want to
Yeah.
do the work to either get back into sync or do the work to break up. Either way, it's work. I
Ah,
think sometimes it's irreconcilable and sometimes it's reconcilable.
yes.
If you
Yes.
want to want it, it's different than if one person wants it and one person doesn't.
Yeah, yeah. The example that you were sharing of your parents having very different personalities, different interests, but having a few things that are in common that turned out to be plenty for them to get along, that really sort of made me think about, the question of, again, coming back to the idea of honesty in relationships. Because if you're going to get to the point of figuring out whether the differences that we have are workable or if they're going to be irreconcilable for us as a couple, I mean, you have to be honest with each other.
So true.
Um, but one of the biggest fears that I've seen come up in the context of being honest in our close relationships, especially when we care about the relationship, is the fear of hurting the other person. It's like, if I'm honest, I'm afraid of hurting the other person, and so actually I'm not even going to talk
Right.
about this thing.
So
How do you even begin to manage or address that fear?
a lot to say about that. So first of all, your first thought or the thought that you ruminate on about another person is not necessarily the truth and is not
Mm,
necessarily really what there is to express. Most of us, if we get hurt, we get judgmental. So we go immediately, we don't want to feel that we got hurt or disappointed or sad or scared. And we immediately go to, you shouldn't have done that. And
mm,
then we go, oh, well, if I say you shouldn't have done that, then they'll be offended or they'll be hurt. And the answer is probably, yeah, they might actually. Your your instinct is correct that if you just say whatever you think all the time, you will offend people and hurt people because that's unedited garbage a lot of the time. So in the teaching that I do with my clients, I teach a balance of grace and wisdom. So the grace
mm,
is like the lubrication, the wisdom is the truth. So the truth is for you to be able to express your experience. The grace is for the other person to be able to hear it and also feel like they can express their experience. Because love is a verb. And the verb is, I
mm,
care as much about your experience as my own. That's what love is. You can love a friend, you can love a business partner, you can love, you can love an animal, right? It's caring about their experience as much as you care about your own. So if you only care about their experience, that's codependence. And if you only care about your own experience, that's narcissism. And everyone's somewhere in the scale, and the healthiest, most balanced place is to be in the middle and to take turns, because you can't do both at the same time.
mm,
You really can't, because if you're expressing something that upset you, you're not you can couch it properly, you can introduce it properly, but in that moment that you're saying that thing hurt my feelings, you're taking care of your own experience. And hopefully everything you
mm,
did at the front and the back takes care of their experience so they can hear it. So I don't recommend carte blanche, tell the truth, say everything you think. Most of it's garbage. Sorry for all of us. It's not an insult to anyone in particular, but we do need to process what we're thinking. And I have my clients process it into what I call a laundry list. And a laundry list is
mm,
very specific. It goes, this is what happened, facts. This was my reaction or my interpretation of what happened, personal experience, not the truth. This is what I don't understand or what I'm still curious about. This is how I wish it would
mm,
have gone differently. Now, can I hear your perspective? So if you follow
mm.
those steps, people are very unlikely to be hurt. They might be a little embarrassed if you caught them at something, but they're not likely to be hurt because you're doing it in such a way of taking ownership that they don't feel blamed, they don't feel judged, they don't feel attacked.
Yes, and it's definitely a skill to practice because I know a lot of times, when you think about, okay, this is what happened, facts, um, and just to distinguish that from this is how I interpreted the facts. A lot of times I see people actually conflating and confusing those two things, and they think about what they're actually saying happened is actually expressing their interpretation, but they
Yes.
think they're stating the facts.
And
Um,
sometimes they skip both and go right to the judgment. You were
yeah,
a jerk to me, right? You don't care about
yes,
my, and go straight to a judgment and accusation, and nobody even knows the facts that we're even talking about or the
yes,
interpretation. So we skip a
yes.
bunch of steps. I think we're, intellectually and emotionally lazy in a
Hmm.
way that really, really undermines the intimacy we have with people.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I hear what you're saying. It's like really important to take some time to process things for yourself and make sure you yourself are having a better understanding of what happened, what you experienced, figure out the difference between what your interpretation is and, what is the facts, etc. And, where, if there's something that you're feeling angry or upset about, there's probably something in there that um, um, you need to understand more and better from the other person's perspective. And hopefully when you understand their perspective, that gets resolved. Because a lot of times, the reason we're upset is because we think the other person did something or intended something that we are finding offensive. But if you can talk through that, you're like,
Exactly.
you didn't mean that.
I mean, here's the dumbest example.
Yeah.
And this is
Yeah.
this is the kind of fight I have with my husband all the time. So
Yeah.
I have a way I like to organize the refrigerator, and it drives me crazy when it's not organized that way. I'm sure people have this with the dirtiness of a car or how people pack the dishwasher or whatever. I open the refrigerator, and when I see it disorganized so that it's not easy to find things and move things around, I go, somebody must be trying to drive me crazy. Somebody must just not care about our experience, only their own experience. So somebody must be a real jerk. Okay, like that's my mind is going and going, right? But if I sit down and I go, Laurie, you're not right about how the refrigerator should be organized. It's an opinion. It's not a fact.
Yeah.
You're triggered because of your own sense of, because you're in a rush. You don't have time to find what you need. You want everyone to be caring about your experience. You have no idea other people's experience. I don't know what was happening with the person who packed the refrigerator last. So let me just get curious. Let me calm myself down because I'm a grown up. Let me get curious. Let me care about my own experience, but also care about another person's experience, and sit down with my husband and go, hey, is now a good time to talk? I'm having a little bit of an emotional reaction. I want to share it with you. I want to get your perspective. I want to get on the same page. Is now a good time for you? He goes, yes. I say, great. Okay, it might be me. I might be cuckoo. I'm sure I'm missing something here, but I have a way I organize the fridge. I think you know that way. What's going on when you don't do it like that? Like, what's happened? What am I not understanding? Please help me understand. And he goes, well, first of all, it's my job to unpack the groceries, and that's actually a really hard job. I'd like a thank you for that, because it takes a while. And second of all, because you order them to be delivered when we have our family Zoom, I'm supposed to be really quiet during the family Zoom because we're all in the same room. How am I can't be reorganizing the refrigerator when you're on a call and like right nearby. It will make too much noise, and then you'll get mad at me for that. And then by the time the call's over, we're all getting ready for bed and and I don't think about it the next day. It's totally gone from my memory as a thing. Plus, by the time I would ever come back to it, you've already rearranged it the way you like it. So he just made 4 really good points, right? That I was not thinking about at all from the perspective of my experience. By the way, I have not had this argument with him, but now I'm just pretending to have it because I do think that's what he would say. So I'm almost good enough to argue the other person's side also. Yay me. Okay, so the minute I hear all that, now I'm human to human, right?
Yeah.
Partner, not, the red team against the blue team. Right? Like
Yes.
it's a partnership, and we're trying to work it out. And I can think, well, maybe I shouldn't order it at that time, or maybe I should help him unpack it, or maybe I should just suck it up. It's my job the next day to rearrange the refrigerator or whatever. And at the end of the day, if I care more about it, it probably should be my job. So by the end of that back and forth, I can go, okay, there was no personal attack happening. There was no insult. This was not a purposeful, malicious thing. I have my own issues separate from my husband's issues or action. And now what do we want to agree to going forward? Maybe we want to agree to order at a different time. Maybe we want to agree it's my job to rearrange it the next day. Maybe we want to agree that I just don't get to lose my marbles when I see it that way. We can agree on an agreement, and then we now have a plan going forward. So it isn't just like waiting until the next time it happens again.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that example. It always helps to have a concrete example. You actually made me think about, like in my own family, well, my parents have in some ways very different personalities also. And one of the ways in which they are different is like how organized things need to be, actually. My dad, he's a trained and by profession an engineer. And so he's a very like systems person. He likes to have everything like set according to a system and, everything ordered and, like he puts forth a lot of time and energy to not only create systems in the first place, but to maintain the systems and keep updating and improving on them. And I have some of that tendency to
It's
get it from
a
my
great
dad.
trait. It's a great
Yeah,
trait
it, it,
until
it
you have
is.
to live with a slob.
It turns out, interestingly, I was doing a personality kind of test, and it actually you determine for yourself on a scale where you are in terms of how much of a systems person you are versus not. And but the interesting thing that I learned in doing that test is that actually there's a relatively small minority of people who are so highly systematic in the way that they like to do things and process and thinking, etc. And most of the people are much lower on the scale. Like they find when things are the very need to be so organized and things they find it burdensome. Their mind just doesn't work like that, so they can find it confusing, and just like too much effort, too much work, etc. And my mom definitely is more like that, where I mean, it's not that she's completely unorganized, but she doesn't want too much rigidity in the way she does things, and she wants to be able to change things around and so forth. And my parents have now been married for over 45 years, so they have figured things out in terms of how they get along. But one of the things that when you were talking made me think about was, like definitely one of the things I've seen my parents do is that there are some areas where my dad just takes charge because those are really important to him. And then he takes care of organizing them and keeping them as he wants them. And then there's some spaces where he just lets my mom do what she wants, like in the kitchen. If my dad comes into the kitchen and he tries to organize it, she literally pushes him out. It's like, no,
Yeah.
forget it. You're not
Like, but
messing
it'll
up
be
my kitchen.
better. No. Exactly. For all I know,
Yeah.
my husband likes the refrigerator all the way he likes it. Yeah. We
Yeah.
call that bodegas or departments. And the funny
Mm,
trick to teach our couples is that the person who's in charge of it should be the person who's better at it and or who cares
mm,
about it more. So 50
yeah.
is not really how good relationships work. Same in business, same in friendships. It's not 50-50. I have a best
Yeah.
friend. I call her 100% of the time. 100% of the time. It works great for me. It works great for her. It's not 50-50.
Yeah.
100% of the time. It's not 50-50.
Yes. That's so
Similarly,
awesome.
it's not 50-50 on who handles the children's clothes. It's not 50-50 who handles the car. It's just not 50-50. It's who's better at it and who cares about it more.
Yes. Ah, I love
And then
that.
you can ask for help. You're not alone, but you're the CEO if it's your area.
Yeah. That's another thing that I'm really appreciating about your approach. And I think like for me, especially like growing up, um, my family has moved around. We're now living in the United States, and for sure a lot has changed for us since we moved here. But when we were back living in India and Pakistan, we were part of a joint family system, and our family was more on the traditional side of things. And over there, it's like very interesting because there's a lot of like you don't choose your role. You don't like there's a lot that's just assigned to you based on like if you're the son versus the daughter, if your rank, and like I'm the middle child, that makes a difference versus if I was the eldest or the youngest. Um, Being a daughter makes a difference if I'm the son. And in the context of marriage, husband and wife, in a traditional context, there are already ascribed roles and duties. And so you, even if you're not good at something, but it's part of your job description as
Right.
it's prescribed traditionally, then um, I definitely see like lots of struggles that
For sure.
happen because of that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I really
I mean,
love this
there are
approach that
two
you have.
separate, there are two struggles. One is to
Yeah.
be able to break free of the cultural norms if you don't
Mm,
fit in with them or ascribe to them. And the other is to uncondition yourself that you should be doing that if you decide you don't want to subscribe anymore to that
yes.
norm. You still have to uncondition yourself. I mean, my mother was actually telling
Yeah.
me recently, I was born in the 70s, and she knew she wanted to work, right? And it was kind of like the first
Mm,
generation of women where it was kind of, I wouldn't say expected, but it was starting to be normal that a woman would work outside the home, starting to be
mm,
normal, but it was still so on the fringe in America
yeah.
that she was conflicted. And she had to ask my dad permission, quote unquote.
Mm,
My dad said, I don't think you should ask me. He was very progressive. He said, I don't think you should have to ask me for permission, but he understood she felt, because she
yeah.
still had the conditioning, that she did have to ask for that permission, and
Yeah.
it was a very culture norm breaking decision for her to work outside of the house and for them to split the parenting.
Yes, yes. Actually, I've seen that happen with my parents too, because like especially like I was saying, since we've come to America, so much has changed for us because here, we don't have that extended family system that we were living as part of in India and Pakistan. Here it's just us. And so in some ways, not only a lot of the things that worked over there, it's not even possible to make them work
Right.
here because just
Exactly.
things are so different. And interesting, um, yeah, and so to learn to renegotiate how your relationship is going to be, and again, how important honesty is in that context. And one thing that I saw my mom struggle with is, uh, you know, s- similar to your dad having the more progressive attitude, my dad also had that more progressive attitude. My mom is very traditional in her thinking, very traditional. And so even to this day, even after all the changes that we have experienced, she tries to cling to doing things the old way. And so she still, will call my dad and ask him for permission for things there. He's like, sure, sure. I mean, because he knows her, he's like, sure. He goes along with it. But uh, like for my mom, in the context of one of the challenges in being honest was is that in her mind, um, she thinks of her partnership with my dad as my dad's the head and she is the follower. I mean, he's the leader, she's the follower, and so she needs to do things his way and what he like the way he likes it and so forth. And so for her to express her own
Right.
opinion and be like, no, I like things differently, I want things done differently,
Right.
it's very hard for her because
Right.
she thinks she's doing something improper.
Right. Well, it's a very strong cultural conditioning. It really is like if you grew up speaking French and now all of a sudden someone's saying speak Spanish, you don't know Spanish, right? You really would have to be around Spanish to learn Spanish, and then you still would dream in French and you would still think in French by habit. So if it's your primary
Yeah,
language, it's same thing in changing cultural norms. And that's why that first assignment is so profound, is asking you, what do you think? No, really, what do you think? Because I know
yes,
it's easier to just think what your parents taught you or what your culture taught you or what religion taught you, or what your friends are doing, but just take a moment, just pause, see if you can think for yourself, hold all that in consideration, and then see if you can think for yourself. Is there anything that's really knocking at your heart saying, you know, like I might be gay, or I might be trans, or I might want to have a non-arranged marriage, or I might want to work outside the home, or I might want to have my own show, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
the exact conversations that are being had, especially with first generation, you know, kids in a more westernized culture, especially when they have more traditional or more religious parents. We're in that moment right now. We are really
Yeah.
in that moment where
Yeah.
parents and the kids are trying to figure out what's okay. What is me protecting
Yes.
my child and protecting my traditions? And what
Mm.
is me making sure my child ends up happy and healthy and not suicidal?
Yes. Yes. So starting with the self, starting with just like challenging your own self to really think for yourself, to being honest with yourself. And so, if you're afraid to be honest with yourself, how do you begin
Yeah,
to
that's a sign
deal
there's
with
something
that?
there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why it's good to have these podcasts, to have, you know, support groups on Facebook, to have friends, to have community, to have support groups for whatever you're going through. If you've survived abuse, if you have
Mm.
survived addiction, if you're dealing with an addiction, if you had an absent parent, if somebody died, you know, there's all kinds of things that where you may not trust your own voice yet. You may need to be around other people who have experienced that, who have worked a few more steps than you have to come out or
Yeah.
be public or be comfortable with who they are and what they've experienced. So I would say that would be the first step if you're not ready to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Go sit in a room with other people who are
Yeah.
being honest and see how you feel.
Yeah. That's interesting approach that you highlight. I actually remember this is a different context. And I don't know if I was having so much trouble in terms of being honest with myself, but I was having trouble speaking up. And this is like back when I was in my late teens, and I was just I'm a survivor of child sexual abuse, and it was right around when I was in my late teens. I'd started college, and I was in America at this time, and a lot of things were changing for me. And I was, at a time where I was starting to struggle with, being a survivor of abuse. Uh, and trying to figure out how to help myself heal and so forth. And one of the things that I actually did find helpful, because I couldn't speak about it yet to anyone, I hadn't even told my family. But I did, on my college campus. Uh, it was one day I was walking by one of the quads that we had, and there was like this clothesline that was hung up. And it's like, whoa, what's going on? So I just went to check it out. Turns out it's like this whole club that was on campus, and it's actually on many campuses across the US. It's called the Clothesline Project. And what they do is actually raise awareness about issues of sexual abuse, sexual assault. And it's sort of like what it has to do with the clothesline is, that uh, uh, analogy of doing like
Airing,
dirty laundry, airing your
airing
dirty
your dirty laundry.
laundry. Yes.
Put your
So
story up.
yes, exactly. So you actually have survivors and allies, people who have had some kind of experience around sexual abuse or sexual assault, and they'll write something of their story on these t-shirts. Sometimes the t-shirts are actual cloth fabric, other times it's paper or whatever. And then you hang it up, and you do it in a very public space. So people
Yes.
are forced to see it in some ways, and then they would every so often, while the clothesline was hanging, they would congregate people and just do like little workshops, little talks. And so I just started out by just listening to what other people were sharing. I couldn't share anything myself, but just listening to them. And then I started showing up to their weekly meetings. And again, I was just listening. I didn't tell anyone about what I had experienced, but just being around people who are talking about it, who are sharing about it, really started to open something up for me. And it was one of the things that I was then like, okay, I want to open up to someone about this. And then I actually ended up going to see one of the psychologists on campus because we got free counseling access as a student, which was so amazing. So,
Right.
but to start by just hanging around people who were actively trying to do something about this challenge or problem was really helpful.
Right. And if I would build on that, I would just say, first you can listen, then you can write your own story for your own self,
Mm,
like share it with yourself. Then you
yes,
can pick a trusted professional like a coach or a therapist. Then you can pick a trusted friend. Then you can
yes,
see how many friends. And then you can think about going back to your abuser or your family, which will be the hardest one.
yes,
But until
yes.
you're really free to tell your experience, it's not the
Mm,
truth, it's your experience, and everyone has their experience. You're not going to be free from that. We call that a haunting.
yeah,
It haunts you, it follows you, and
yes,
it becomes a
it
secret. And
does.
the more it's a secret, the worse it haunts you. And the more it haunts you, the more it's a secret. So that just
Oh,
that beginning of the steps of telling is huge.
yes,
And of course, we want every kid to think they can tell if they're being abused. We want kids to think they can tell if they're being abused when it's happening. But
yes,
unfortunately, we don't have that culture fully yet, and we are paying the price.
yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. I could just have a whole another day long conversation with you on that because uh but we won't get into it. At least not right now, just because of time constraints. And oh my gosh, talking about time constraints, I see we are nearing the time and we should be wrapping up for now. Oh gosh. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Laurie, for everything that you have shared so far. Is there anything else that's on your heart and mind that you would like to share as we wrap up?
Yeah, I think if you're still listening and we didn't scare you
Yeah.
off talking about telling the truth to yourself and telling the truth to other people and really going for your things you're taking to the grave with you, things that are taboo, things you're not allowed to say, things nobody wants to hear supposedly. If you're still listening, you're a brave soul and you're a pioneer and you're a change agent.
Mm,
And this is the front lines of being a change agent, is telling the truth, whether it's telling
yeah.
the truth about climate change or telling the truth about sexual abuse or telling the truth about just what you need to feel loved in your relationships. It
Yes.
is the cutting edge of change making in the world. So I honor you if you made it this far into the podcast and you are that person, that pioneer who's doing it. I have a TEDx talk that's all about telling the truth. It's 18 minutes like TEDx talks tend to be. So if you are interested in all the ways that we lie and why we lie and how pigeons even lie and how ubiquitous lying is and what we can do if we want to become
Yeah.
one of those rare human change agents that wants to attempt to live a secret-free life, a truthful life,
Yes.
I would direct you to the TEDx talk. I would direct you to my website, which is lauriegerber.com, LAURIEGERBER.com. There you can find lots of information about dating and love, but you can also find the TEDx talk. You can also find a free quiz. You can also find all kinds of other fun goodies.
Oh, yay. Awesome. I'm definitely going to check out that TEDx talk and what else you have to offer on your website. Thanks so much again, Laurie. And for my last reminder to our audience, I'll just encourage you to please make sure you check the show notes because, yes, we will be dropping Laurie's links in there so you can connect with her and continue to learn with her and get the help and support you need whenever you feel ready for it. So until we connect next time, I wish you lots and lots of peace and joy.